Before we start, if you enjoy the story, please leave a like and check if you're subscribed. The distress beacon pulsed against Cale Draven's neural display like a dying heartbeat. He'd been drifting through the neutral zone for 3 weeks, running security for convoys that never materialized, burning fuel and patience in equal measure. The beacon changed everything. Salvage rights in contested space meant hazard pay. Nav, give me coordinates. The ship's AI materialized as amber geometric patterns across the console. 14,000 kilometers into Vadran territory. Also, you're not authorized to enter Vadran territory. Noted. Cale adjusted their vector, G-forces pressing him back as the frigate's engines flared. How long? 19 minutes. Should I prepare your obituary? The shuttle appeared on scans. Diplomatic vessel with collective insignia, hull split open like something had tried to peel it apart. Debris glittered in the starlight, metal and crystallized atmosphere forming a cloud around the wreckage. Cale cut engines and drifted closer on maneuvering thrusters. Plasma burns scored the exterior in parallel lines, military-grade weapons, close range, not an accident. Life signs? One faint Vadran physiology. Cale was already moving toward the airlock, checking his environment suit seals by muscle memory. The powered armor on his left shoulder hummed to life, orange cells pulsing. Prep the medical bay. He crossed the distance on a tether line, boots magnetizing to the torn hull with metallic clicks. The interior was chaos, equipment ripped from moorings, violet blood floating in viscous spheres, emergency lighting flickered red. She was slumped against the far bulkhead, one hand pressed to her side where her suit had been punctured. Even dying, she was striking in ways that bypassed human aesthetics entirely. Pale blue-white skin marked with crimson patterns tracing her face and neck, large eyes reflecting his helmet light, pupils contracted to slits, pointed ears flat against her skull, crimson hair drifting like spilled wine in zero gravity. Cale anchored himself and reached for her. The suit breach was small but catastrophic. Her eyes snapped open as his gloved hands found the emergency seal, ice blue irises holding a predator's focus. Don't move, I'm getting you out. Her hand gripped his wrist, claws extending to scrape armor plating. When she spoke, her voice was precise despite obvious pain. Pursuers cannot allow data core capture. Her ears swiveled, tracking something he couldn't hear. His proximity alarm screamed. 3 contacts emerging from stealth, less than 2 kilometers out. Fighters' weapons hot? Nav extraction now. Already cycling the airlock. Cale hauled Seraph against his chest, lighter than expected, all lean muscle and alien grace. Her head lolled as he pushed off the hull, suit thrusters propelling them toward his ship. The fighters closed fast, engine signatures blooming white-hot. Weapons fire hammered his shields. 10 meters to the airlock. 5. His boots magnetized to the hull, and he cycled the lock with one hand while cradling Seraph with the other, her breach alarm wailing in harmony with collision warnings. The inner door sealed, and Cale moved before full pressurization, carrying her toward the medical bay. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on his face as his helmet retracted. Her pupils dilated, then contracted. Human, she rasped, confusion rippling across alien features. Yeah, lucky you. He lowered her onto the platform, pulling up diagnostics. Nav, biometric scan, emergency protocols for Vadran physiology. I have extremely limited data on Vadran biology. Impact rocked the ship. Cale's hand steadied Seraph as gravity compensators struggled. Her eyes tracked his movement, predatory focus sharpening. Seal her in, he ordered as the containment field activated. Keep her stable. His combat loadout waited in the adjacent armory, armor from classified operations, weapons modified for victory rather than survival. He locked plates into place with practiced efficiency, powered systems integrating with his neural link. Orange cells along his arm pulsed brighter. Through the transparent field, Seraph struggled upright, hands moving toward the data core on her belt. Her markings flickered, crimson glow unstable. Stay down, I'll handle this. Her ears flattened, but her eyes held his for a long moment, something like a question in them. He moved to defensive stations, pulse steady despite chaos. The fighters vectored for another run. Cale's fingers found weapons arrays with practiced ease. The battle lit up his displays in threat markers and targeting solutions. He flew with aggressive precision, forcing mercenary fighters defensive. One peeled off smoking from a direct hit. The others pressed harder, coordinating fire. His shields dropped to 30%. 20. Alarms shrieked. Breach alarm from the starboard airlock. One had gotten through while he focused on the aerial assault. Inside his ship, only one target worth that risk. He abandoned the station and ran. The corridor stretched long. His boots hammered deck plating, armor servos whining. He rounded the corner to see the mercenary at the medical bay entrance, plasma rifle raised. Seraph stood inside the field, body tensed like a cornered predator, still working the data core, trying to purge before capture. The mercenary's finger tightened. Kale didn't think. He threw himself forward, armored body slamming between Seraph and the weapon as the plasma bolt discharged. White-hot agony. The bolt punched through his shoulder guard where plating was thinnest, superheated energy searing flesh and nerves. Force spun him sideways. His body hit deck hard enough to crack his helmet display. Sparks cascaded from damaged armor. His left arm died, powered systems shorting an electrical discharge. Through the pain haze, he heard something between snarl and scream, inhuman, furious. The field dropped. Seraph moved with liquid violence, claws extended, tearing into the mercenary, shredding armor like paper. The soldier went down in seconds. Then she was dragging Kale backward, hands surprisingly gentle against burned skin, despite lethal claws. Her face filled his vision, alien features twisted with something he couldn't name. Her markings blazed crimson, pulsing with his failing heartbeat. "Illogical," she whispered, voice carrying horror and wonder equally. "Why would you—" His vision tunneled. The last thing he saw was her eyes, wide and luminous and bewildered, as if he'd broken every law of physics she understood. And maybe he had. Kale woke to surgical heat in his shoulder. 3 days, his internal chronometer told him, though it felt like minutes. "Your cardiovascular system shut down twice," Seraph said from beside the platform. He turned his head. She sat in a chair dragged from somewhere, ears flattened, crimson markings pulsing dim, exhausted in a way that transcended species. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first." The logic seemed appropriate. Her tone suggested she wasn't convinced. Her fingers rested near the platform edge, claws retracted. "I used biotech from my shuttle to repair tissue damage. Your physiology adapts well." Kale pushed upright despite his shoulders' protests. Her hand moved to stop him, hesitated, withdrew. "The data core," he said. Her ears swiveled forward, direct, very human. She moved to the console with fluid grace. "I was carrying evidence of conspiracy within the Vadran Collective. A separatist faction plans to sabotage humanity's membership petition by engineering a biological crisis that will make your species appear unstable." Manufactured, but real enough to justify isolation protocols. Her fingers moved across displays he couldn't read. "Your interception may have prevented catastrophe for both peoples." Kale tested his weight the tissue held. "Where are we?" 6 days from the nearest collective outpost. I set our course while you were unconscious." "When did you last sleep?" "Vadran require less rest. I've been monitoring your condition and ship systems." "That's not an answer." Her ears flicked back. 73 hours. "Nav, why didn't you—" "I tried," the AI said. Apparently diplomatic training includes ignoring helpful suggestions. Something like amusement crossed Seraph's features. Kale stood, balance wavering. She moved closer, not touching, but protective. "You should rest," she said. "So should you." He led her to the galley, moving slowly. The space was small but had a viewport showing stars streaming past. He pulled protein bars from storage, the good ones he'd been saving, and set them between them. "Why did you do it?" Seraph asked. "The mercenary would have killed me. You had no logical reason to intervene." "Maybe logic isn't everything." "That contradicts Vadran philosophy." Her markings brightened slightly. "We're taught emotional decisions compromise judgment. Attachments create vulnerabilities." "What do you believe?" Her ears tracked his voice. "I believed what I was taught, until I watched you throw yourself in front of plasma fire for a stranger." She leaned forward, claws extending then retracting. "You nearly died, for someone you'd known minutes." "Would it have been more logical to let you die?" From a tactical perspective, yes, your survival probability was higher if you'd eliminated the threat through conventional protocols. But I'd have had to watch you die. Why does that matter? Curiosity rather than challenge. I was nothing to you. Kale unwrapped a bar. I spent 3 years in military service. Classified operations. I watched people die because someone decided their lives were acceptable losses. Logical choices. He met her eyes. I got dishonorably discharged for refusing an order. They told me to abandon civilians because extraction would compromise the mission. I went back anyway. Her ears came forward. You sacrificed your career. I saved 15 people who would have been erased as collateral damage. He took a bite. Maybe that's not logical, but I can live with it. Seraph was quiet, luminous eyes reflecting starlight. When she spoke, her voice carried something vulnerable. Vadran are taught not to grieve what duty requires us to lose, but watching you collapse. Her markings flared. I experienced something I couldn't categorize. Your language suggests fear, but that feels insufficient. What would you call it? I don't have words, only knowing that losing you felt unacceptable. Kale studied the way her hair caught light, her ears tracking sounds he couldn't hear, alien features becoming familiar. Tell me about Vadran, he said. She tilted her head. We value order, purpose. Each serves the collective according to caste and capability. Emotional attachments are discouraged because they create bias. Touch between non-bonded individuals is reserved for medical necessity or combat. Sounds lonely. How can one be lonely surrounded by purpose? Purpose isn't connection. Her pupils dilated, contracted, dilated. You speak as though connection has inherent value. Doesn't it? I was taught it has inherent danger. Her hand moved across the table until fingers rested near his, not touching, but close. Yet you risk yourself for connection. Build relationships with artificial intelligence. Keep tokens from institutions that rejected you. She gestured at his belt medal. Why? Because being alone is a different kind of death. He shifted until their fingers almost touched. Maybe emotion makes us vulnerable, but it also makes us brave. Her claws scraped the table. That philosophy would be considered dangerous. And living without it would be tragic. Her eyes held his, violet bleeding into ice blue. I'm beginning to understand why my people fear yours. Because we feel. Because you make feelings seem like strength. She closed the distance, fingertips brushing his, tentative but deliberate. Her skin felt like warm suede, alien but not wrong. This violates protocols. Do you want to stop? Her claws retracted, her fingers slid more firmly against his. No. They sat while stars streamed past. Seraph's ears swiveled constantly, but her attention never left his face. Kale felt his pulse steady into something calmer than he'd felt in years. What happens at the outpost? He asked. Her markings dimmed. I deliver evidence to the council. You're questioned and likely compensated. And then? Then I return to duty and you to yours. But her voice carried doubt, a subtle purr contradicting the words. That would be logical. Is it what you want? She pulled back slowly as if it cost something. What I want isn't relevant to duty. Maybe it should be. Nav interrupted. Picking up a coded transmission, Vadran military frequencies, you'll want to hear this. Seraph moved to the console with predatory speed. Kale followed, watching her face as the transmission played. Her markings flared brilliant crimson. What is it? When she looked at him, fury and devastation warred in her eyes. The mercenary attack wasn't random. Captain Jarell Vensk authorized it personally. He's coordinating the separatist conspiracy. Her claws extended fully. My own people want me dead. Kale's hand found her shoulder. She stiffened, then relaxed, warmth seeping through his shirt. Then we make sure they fail. She turned, close enough that he could see her skin's texture, markings pulsing with her breathing. You have no obligation. You could deliver me and walk away. I could, but I won't. Why? Barely a whisper, rough with suppressed emotion. Because somewhere between that shuttle and now, you stopped being a stranger. His thumb brushed her shoulder, feeling her shiver. And I don't abandon people I care about. Her eyes searched his face, finding only truth. Her hand covered his, touch gentle despite lethal claws. "This is unwise," she said. "Probably. Violates protocols. Definitely. I don't want you to stop." Vulnerable and raw, Kale shifted closer, other hand rising to brush her jaw. Her skin was impossibly soft. When his fingers traced her markings, they warmed, pulsing brighter. "Then I won't." They stood in the galley's dim light, alien and human, logic and emotion, discovering some connections transcended everything they'd been taught. The collective outpost materialized from the void like a steel flower, its docking arms extending in perfect geometric symmetry. Kale's instincts screamed wrong before his conscious mind caught up. Too quiet, no comm chatter, no standard approach vectors being transmitted. Navfer? Docking clamps engaged with brutal force, magnetic locks slamming home before evasive protocols could activate. The frigate shuddered, held fast. "We're trapped," Seraph said, already moving toward the armory. Her ears lay flat, predatory tension coiling through her frame. The boarding ramp cycled open without authorization. Vadran security forces flooded the corridor. A dozen soldiers in tactical armor, weapons trained with professional precision. They moved past Kale like he was furniture, surrounding Seraph with clinical efficiency. "Envoy Seraph," the squad leader said in accented standard, "you're being detained pending investigation of diplomatic misconduct." Her markings flared crimson. On whose authority? Captain Vensk, Collective Security. Kale stepped forward. A plasma rifle swung toward his chest. "Stay back, human. This doesn't concern you." "She's under my protection." The squad leader's lip curled. "You have no authority here." He gestured, and two soldiers grabbed Kale's arms, hauling him toward a different corridor. He caught Seraph's eyes, saw fury warring with calculation in her alien features before they separated them. The detention cell was standard military, 4 meters square, reinforced walls, single bench. Kale tested the door once, knowing it was futile, then sat to conserve energy. Think, plan, survive. An hour passed before the door opened. Rook Tamblin entered, moving with mercenary confidence. Early 40s, burn scars visible on his neck, cold blue eyes that catalogued Kale like inventory. 2 guards flanked him, but stayed outside. Kale Draven, dishonorably discharged, surviving on salvage work. Rook pulled up a holographic file. Intercepted a Vadran diplomatic shuttle, killed a collective security contractor, and harbored a fugitive envoy. Impressive resume for a washed-up combat engineer. "She's not a fugitive." "That's not what Captain Vensk says." Rook leaned against the wall, casual. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to be charged with espionage. Tried under collective law, sentenced to a labor colony where humans rarely survive past 18 months, he smiled. "Unless you cooperate." Define cooperate. Testify that Seraph showed signs of emotional compromise, that she acted irrationally, violated protocols, engaged in unauthorized contact with a human. Rook's smile widened. Easy testimony, probably even true. Kale met his eyes. "No. Think carefully. Vensk is funding my operation personally. This isn't some rogue element, it's policy. The Separatists want humanity kept out of the collective, and your girlfriend's evidence threatens that agenda." He pushed off the wall. "She's already being offered a deal. Recant her findings, return to Vadran Command for rehabilitation, and you go free. If she refuses," he shrugged, "well, labor colonies are unpleasant." "She won't recant. Then you're both dead, but hey, at least it'll be romantic." Rook left. The door sealed. Kale stared at the ceiling, mind racing through scenarios, all of them bad. Seraph wouldn't betray her evidence. He wouldn't give false testimony, which meant they were running out of options fast. Elsewhere in the outpost, Seraph stood in what had been temporary quarters, now functionally a cell. A data terminal blinked, awaiting her official recantation. She ignored it. Instead, she accessed restricted files through her diplomatic clearance, credentials they hadn't revoked yet, overconfidence or bureaucracy. The files painted a damning picture. Vensk hadn't just authorized the mercenary attack. He'd been engineering incidents across the neutral zone for months, falsified reports of human aggression, manufactured evidence of instability, all designed to justify isolation. Except one report broke pattern, Kale's file. His genuine act of sacrifice was the only documented case that contradicted the narrative. Proof that humans were capable of honor beyond self-interest. She downloaded everything to her internal storage implant, biological backup the scanners wouldn't detect. Then she started planning. The escort arrived at shift change, sloppy timing, 4 guards to transfer her to the formal recantation chamber. They didn't bother with restraints. Why would they? She was diplomatic caste, trained for negotiation, not violence. They forgot diplomats were still predators. Seraph moved between heartbeats. Her claws found the first guard's throat before his weapon cleared its holster. The second took a spinning kick that shattered his faceplate. The third managed to raise his rifle. She tore it from his hands and used it as a club, armor denting under impact. The fourth was scrambling backward when she dropped him with a precise strike to his temple. 15 seconds. 4 unconscious soldiers. Her markings blazed crimson, bloodlust and purpose indistinguishable. She stripped tactical gear from the smallest guard, pulled it on over her formal robes. The fit was wrong, but functional. Then she headed for detention, moving through corridors with predatory efficiency. The outpost's layout was standard collective design. She'd studied schematics during diplomatic training. Detention would be lower level, maximum security. She bypassed 2 patrol routes and disabled a security drone before reaching the corridor Kale had been taken down. The guards outside his cell died quietly. Her claws were surgical when they needed to be. She opened the door. Kale looked up, expression cycling from surprise to relief to something warmer. "You came for me." "We don't abandon people we care about." She tossed him a plasma rifle. "Can you fight?" He caught it one-handed, checking the charge with practiced ease. Always could. Just needed a good reason. They moved through the outpost like a matched set, her predatory grace and his tactical precision complementing each other perfectly. When security forces engaged, they fought with synchronization that shouldn't have been possible after 6 days. But combat had its own language, and apparently they were both fluent. Seraph took point, claws, and stolen rifle working in lethal harmony. Kale provided covering fire, his combat training fully unleashed. When she took a glancing hit and stumbled, his arm was around her waist instantly. Not protocol, desperate need. She steadied herself against his armored chest, claws extending to grip metal plating, and her markings flushed brilliant crimson in a way that had nothing to do with injury. "I'm fine," she said, voice rough. "You're bleeding." "So are you." He was. Plasma burns on his side where armor had been scored through. They'd worry about it later. The docking bay was ahead, their ship still locked in clamps. Nav would have protocols for emergency release, but they needed time to initiate them. Time they didn't have, as reinforcements poured into the bay from multiple access points. "Cover me," Kale ordered, sprinting for the ship's access ramp. Seraph planted herself between him and incoming fire, rifle barking methodically. Her ears tracked targeting lasers, body moving on pure instinct. Behind her, she heard the clamps releasing one by one, magnetic locks disengaging with metallic shrieks. A plasma bolt got through her guard, searing across her shoulder. Pain flared white-hot, but she didn't fall. Couldn't fall. Not when Kale was counting on her. "Now!" She turned and ran, boots hammering deck plating. The ramp was rising, ship already rotating for departure. She launched herself across the gap, fingers finding the ramp's edge. Kale's hand closed around her wrist, hauling her up with strength born from adrenaline and fear. The ship's engines screamed. The bay's atmospheric shield rippled as they punched through, momentum throwing them both against the corridor wall. Kale's arms went around her instinctively, his body cushioning her impact. They lay tangled together as Nav vectored away from the outpost, alarms wailing about hull damage and depleted shields. Neither moved immediately. Seraph's face was pressed against Kale's neck, her breath hot against his skin. His heart hammered beneath her palm, where it rested on his chest. "We can't go back," she said finally. "They'll hunt us, both species, Vadran and human authorities." "I know." She lifted her head, meeting his eyes. Her markings pulsed crimson, hair disheveled, blood streaking her face from the shoulder wound. She'd never looked more beautiful or more dangerous. "Why did you wait for me?" Her voice carried wonder and confusion. "You could have escaped while they were focused on me." "We've been over this," His hand came up, cupping her jaw with careful tenderness despite the violence still singing in his veins. I don't abandon people you care about. She finished it with him, something like a smile ghosting across her alien features. Then, before logic could intervene, she closed the distance and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration across species boundaries, learning what worked and what didn't. Her lips were softer than he expected, warmer, and when she made a small sound low in her throat, it went straight to his core. His fingers tangled in her crimson hair and her claws extended to grip his shoulders without breaking skin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, her eyes had gone completely violet. That violated approximately 15 protocols, she whispered. Want to violate a few more? Her answering smile showed teeth. Yes. But Nav's voice cut through the moment. Hate to interrupt, but we have a problem. Long-range scan shows Vensk's command ship just entered the sector, and he's brought friends. Kale and Seraph exchanged a look. Then they were moving, heading for the bridge together, fingers intertwined despite tactical impracticality. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. And that made all the difference. Ambassador Theron's neutral vessel hung in deep space like a promise of sanctuary. The elderly Vadran diplomat had responded to Seraph's encrypted distress call within hours, her reputation for political maneuvering the only reason they'd risked contact at all. The council tribunal convened in a sterile chamber designed to project authority. 15 council members arranged in a semicircle, their formal robes denoting rank and caste. Seraph stood at the center, data core in hand, her tactical gear replaced with diplomatic robes that felt like armor of a different kind. Kale waited outside. His presence was political liability, but his testimony was the only corroboration she had. His shoulder ached beneath fresh bandages, reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. Inside, Seraph presented her evidence with clinical precision, financial records, falsified reports, communication logs proving Vensk's conspiracy. Her voice never wavered, even when council members exchanged skeptical glances. Then Vensk arrived. He entered with a full security detachment, moving with predatory confidence. His darker blue-gray skin and silver markings denoted military authority. Scars disrupted his facial patterns, evidence of combat experience. Honored Council, he said, voice carrying calculated respect, I move for Envoy Seraph's immediate arrest on charges of treason. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. She has been emotionally compromised by a human. Vensk's gaze fixed on Seraph, cold and unyielding. Her judgment is impaired, her evidence fabricated to justify attachment that violates every principle of Vadran rationality. Seraph's markings flared crimson, biological betrayal of emotion she couldn't hide. The council noticed. She saw doubt creeping into their expressions. My findings are supported by independent verification, she said. The financial records can be interpreted multiple ways, Vensk interrupted. What cannot be interpreted is your behavior. You've spent 6 days alone with a human, engaged in unauthorized physical contact, acted on impulse rather than protocol. He gestured dismissively. The council knows what this means. Emotional compromise renders diplomatic judgment invalid. The weight of cultural truth pressed against her. Vadran who acted on feeling were considered damaged, and her markings betrayed her with every crimson pulse. If I may address the council, Kale's voice cut through the chamber. He'd entered without permission, guards moving too slowly to stop him. His powered armor hummed softly, orange cells pulsing. He looked every inch the soldier despite diplomatic setting. Human Draven, the council leader said, voice carefully neutral. You were not summoned. No, but I have testimony relevant to these proceedings. Kale moved to stand beside Seraph, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Captain Vensk asked me why I risked my life for an alien I'd just met. Said my actions proved humans are too emotional to be trusted. That instinct makes us dangerous. He paused, meeting each council member's gaze in turn. He's right. I acted on instinct, but instinct isn't the same as stupidity, and emotion isn't the same as weakness. His hand found Seraph's, deliberate, public, defiant. I saved her because letting someone die when you can prevent it isn't logical. It's cowardice, and maybe that's not how Vadran think, but it's real. Seraph's fingers tightened around his. Her claws remained retracted. Absolute trust. You ask if I compromised her judgment? Kale continued. I did. I made her question whether duty without compassion is really strength, whether living without connection is living at all. He looked at Vensk. And that terrifies people like him, because if Vadran start acting on conscience instead of protocol, his conspiracy falls apart. Vensk's expression hardened. This proves my point. The human admits to corrupting. I admit to caring about someone who saved my life. Kale's voice carried soldier's edge now. Seraph acted on evidence. The fact that preserving that evidence required trusting a human who demonstrated honor in one instinctive choice, rather than years of calculated strategy, isn't a flaw in her judgment. It's a revelation about yours. Seraph stepped forward, her voice steady despite markings blazing crimson. My biology betrays emotion I cannot hide. Vadran physiology makes deception regarding feelings impossible. She addressed the council directly. These markings have glowed throughout my testimony. Every Vadran here knows what that means. Biological marker of truth we cannot fake. She released Kale's hand, extending her claws in formal challenge gesture. If feeling loyalty to someone who saved my life makes me compromised, I accept that compromise gladly. If caring about honor over expedience makes me damaged, I am damaged. Her ears flattened, predatory focus absolute. But condemn me for choosing integrity over cold logic, and you prove Captain Vent's conspiracy correct, that Vadran fear emotion not because it's weak, but because you've forgotten how to be brave. Silence held the chamber. Then Ambassador Theron spoke, her ancient voice carrying weight of decades. Captain Vensk, you stand accused of sedition, conspiracy, and attempted murder of a diplomatic envoy. She gestured, and security forces, loyal to her rather than Vensk, moved forward. You are hereby stripped of command pending formal investigation. Vensk's hand moved toward his weapon. Kale was faster, plasma rifle trained before metal-cleared holster. Don't, Kale said quietly. Vensk sneered but raised his hands. Security took him into custody, his protests fading as they escorted him out. The council deliberated for 17 minutes. When the verdict came, it carried weight of cultural shift. The conspiracy is confirmed. Captain Vensk and associated separatists will face formal censure. The council leader's gaze moved to Seraph. Envoy Seraph is cleared of all charges. Furthermore, humanity's petition for collective membership is fast-tracked. Evidence suggests human emotional capacity may represent moral courage Vadran have failed to recognize in ourselves. Murmurs of agreement, some reluctant, some genuine. Envoy Seraph, you are granted unprecedented authority as humanity's primary liaison. Human Draven will serve as your official security escort. Everyone knew the appointment was more personal than professional. No one objected. Afterward, they stood together on Theron's observation deck. The viewport showed stars stretching infinite in every direction. Seraph's formal robes hung differently now. Less armor, more acknowledgement of who she'd become, said. We survived. She turned to face him, close enough that he could see exhaustion and relief warring in her alien features. There's a difference. Is there? Her hand found his, fingers slotting between his with careful precision. Her claws retracted completely, gesture of absolute vulnerability. I violated every protocol I was raised to honor, she said quietly. Acted on emotion, chose personal loyalty over duty. No. Her eyes met his, violet and luminous. But I don't know what comes next, how to navigate what we've become to each other. Kale's other hand rose to cup her jaw, thumb tracing the crimson markings that pulsed beneath his touch. We figure it out together, one day at a time. That's not a plan. No, but it's honest. He leaned closer, breath ghosting across her lips, and maybe honest is better than perfect. She closed the distance, kissing him with tenderness that transcended species. Her hands found his shoulders, claws extending just enough to grip fabric without breaking skin. His arms went around her waist, pulling her against him with need, tempered by care. When they broke apart, her markings glowed brilliant crimson, brighter than he'd ever seen them. I don't have words for what I feel, she whispered. You don't need words. His forehead pressed against hers, breathing synchronized. I know. They stood like that while stars wheeled past, alien and human, logic and emotion, two beings who'd redefined each other's understanding of strength. Seraph's head found his shoulder, settling there with soft purr that meant contentment. Kale's arms tightened around her, protective and possessive in equal measure. Where do we go from here? She asked. Wherever the work takes us, you're humanity's liaison now, I'm your security. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Convenient arrangement. Her laugh was quiet, warm, very convenient. They didn't promise forevers, didn't pretend their differences had vanished or that the path ahead would be simple. But they'd already fought the hardest battle, choosing vulnerability when every instinct screamed for armor, choosing connection when isolation felt safer. Kale? Yeah. Thank you for being illogical. He smiled against her hair. Thank you for letting me. Outside the viewport, the universe stretched infinite. Inside the observation deck, two people from different worlds discovered that the space between species wasn't measured in distance but in courage. The courage to reach across the void and trust that someone would reach back. And they had, and that was enough.